All right, welcome everybody to our January 28th Board of Douglas County Commissioners business meeting. To kick us off, I will read, first let you know, anybody who's here in person, that there are copies of the paper agenda on the table back by the door. There might be coffee in there too. I think I saw Robin make some if anybody needs some. And then our full agenda packet is available on our website to see the entirety of each agenda item. Reviewing our full agenda, first we will consider our consent agenda, where there are a total of 6 items. After that, we will have general public comment. We do welcome general public comment for addressing issues that are not on today's agenda, but otherwise related to county business. Given our limited time and the need to have an orderly and efficient meeting, we do apply certain rules regarding public comments. We will do our best to enforce these rules consistently and without regard to the point of view expressed by the speaker. Each speaker will be limited to a total of 3 minutes of speaking time. However, we will accept public comment of any length in writing. Individual speakers may not donate unused time to other speakers. All comments must address topics within the jurisdiction of the County Commission, and we do reserve the right to mute and remove any speaker whose comments are threatening, aggressively hostile, or belligerent. Campaigning for public office during the public comment period is not allowed. Please give your full name and residence for our meeting minutes if comfortable doing so. And please address your comments to the commission directly. We will hear from people who are here in person first, then we'll look to our Zoom meeting attendees. For anybody online, please use the raise your hand function if you wish to provide your public comment virtually. Please also know that comments received by the commission during our meetings do not necessarily represent the views of Douglas County government, but we do value the input. We usually don't respond to general public comment on the spot, but if you leave your contact information with county staff, we will try and get specific questions answered later. After general public comment concludes, we will move on to our regular business agenda item for tonight. There is only one regular business agenda item for this evening, and that will be a diagnostic review for zoning. And for each action item that we do hear from staff or an applicant first, we will then have questions from the commission, and then we will open the floor for public comment on each specific agenda item. Once public comment is concluded, we will bring that item back to the commission for any further discussion and a vote on action items if relevant. Lastly, a recording of this meeting will be available on the county's YouTube page and website later. With that, we will jump into our consent agenda, and I'll ask if any commissioner wishes to pull anything for further discussion or any questions. Seeing none, does anybody in the public wish to pull anything from the consent agenda this evening? Any raised hands, Sarah? Okay, we'll go ahead and bring that back to the commission, and I'll accept a motion.
Motion to approve consent agendas items 1 through 6.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Thank you. With that, we will move on to general public comment. Is there anybody here who wishes to provide general public comment on items not on today's agenda? Go ahead and come forward. And just a reminder, when you get up there to press the button on the mic, the light will turn green and you're ready to go.
Hi, Tim Hamilton, Lawrence, Kansas 66044. So I sent an email last night. I'm going to read this. It says, hi, Sarah. It was nice meeting you a couple of weeks ago at the commission meeting. You gave me your card and said that if I wanted to put image up during the meeting for public comment, to email those to you. Attached is a short PowerPoint, which I would like to load onto the laptop to use during the public comment section. And she responded politely. I don't think that's exactly what I said. We have never had public commenters use technology during public comment. I don't have tech support to support that. I'll forward your PowerPoint to the commission in advance. And this comes on the heels of your comment, Commissioner, that you said we value the public's input. So I don't want to talk about my PowerPoint at all. I think there's a much, much more important thing here, and that is free speech. The Supreme Court has said for free speech to have meaning, it has to be effective free speech. And the fact that we don't have the technology here so that someone from the public can put an image up, a table, a graph, a video is unacceptable. There are these Elmo machines, which are projectors so that someone can put a photo, something that everyone can see. I want to see I just don't want to hear, I want to see what my fellow citizens, taxpayers are saying or doing. And I think they should be able to see and hear what I'm doing. These Elmo machines, where I teach at Johnson County Community College, there's over 60 classrooms. Every one of them has that. The federal courts have had that for 15 years. Just something so that people can give images and can be shown, because otherwise you're stifling the free speech that the public might have. And it would just be really, really nice. We have the technology. It's the year 2026. We're spending millions of dollars on all sorts of things. We can get a used one off Facebook Marketplace for $80. So there you go. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment. Is there anybody else here who would like to provide general public comment today?
It's already on, right? Okay. Patrick Ross, 66049. I just wanted to come here to update the community on the new Boston Crossing issue. The project is tentatively being renamed to 1059, and here in about a couple months, the updated plat and comprehensive plan amendments will come before this commission, the city commission, and the planning commission. And for those of you who aren't aware of that project, it's a massive development adjacent to the Haskell-Baker wetlands. It will threaten that environment, and there are any number of reasons why this project should not be done. But I'm here to specifically ask the county, because the county is currently studying that corridor. They have two studies going on. They have one with the JEO consulting group that looks towards projecting future development in the Wakarusa Valley. And the state is also looking at that same area to redefine the effective floodplain maps for development there. The current maps that this project has had to pass date back to 1997. So we have gone now, nearly 30 years. And the very technology and technological advances that the previous speaker just spoke to have also gone into environmental sciences. There's any number of reasons why I could get into why this project should not happen. I think, unfortunately, a great too many people in Lawrence and the surrounding areas do not even know it is occurring. And it is my goal to spread amongst the community awareness of the issue and to also offer a solution to all parties, in that the very same developer is building a massive housing development out west of Lawrence, past the bypass on 15. He proposes a great deal of houses. The city of Lawrence is heavily invested in utility infrastructure out by the bypass to allow for future growth out west of town. So it is where our community is expecting and wanting to grow. And I would propose that instead of just building houses out there, we build all of the great amenities that this project supposedly is offering us, and all the property taxes that we stand to gain will still be able to be had by our city, but it also won't threaten a very crucial and vital ecosystem of the wetlands. And then while I'm here, I'd also like to update people on House Bill 2476. It is a bill that just passed the Committee of Agriculture and Natural Resources today, and was now going to be moved to the House and can be brought up at any moment. But it's a very crucial bill that Bayer and other chemical companies are pushing in multiple states to shield them from any liability from failure to warn lawsuits. So I want you to, if you care about that issue, or farmers here in Kansas, and specifically Douglas County, write to your commissioners and go and give comment, because it's something that affects all of our collective health. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else here in person that wishes to provide general public comment this evening? All right, seeing no takers, do we have any virtual hands, Sarah? Okay, With that, we will close general public comment and move on to our regular agenda item with our singular item, which is a presentation about a zoning diagnostic review. And Sean, are you kicking this off or
Yeah,
are you just
I'll ju-
inviting?
I'll just quickly
Zones.
kind of introduce it. The next item is introduction to Clarion Consulting, who's assisting the county with a diagnostic review of our zoning and our subdivision regulations. I just want to emphasize this is an important first step in ensuring our development regulations remain clear, effective, and aligned with the community's long-range vision and planning. The review will help identify strengths, gaps, and opportunities for modernization. At this point, I'll invite Elizabeth and Gabby with Clarion to provide an overview of the scope of work, their process, and the anticipated next steps.
Thanks, Sean. Oh, Madam Chair and Commissioners, I'm Elizabeth Garvin with Clarion Associates, and I've got my colleague, Gabby Hart, with me. We came in, thank you so much. Sorry, my tech skills, no good. We came in to spend some time meeting with Public Works and Planning staff today and tomorrow. And we are excited that you had some time on the agenda this evening, just so we can introduce the project and talk about kind of where we're going with it and see if you have any guidance you want to share with us about this. So as Sean said, this is the land use regulations diagnostic review. So this is the first step of thinking about rewriting regulations. You try to nail down what the issues are, what you might want to fix and why. How would the regulations need to be fixed to comply with Plan 2040? How could they be reorganized to be easier to follow? What would need to be included so that staff can make good recommendations and you can make good decisions. And let's put Planning Commission in there also. So those are some of the things we think about as we start a project like this. Should be going. It's slower than I am. So Clarion Associates is a land use planning firm out of Denver and Chapel Hill. I went to KU, so I don't talk to our Chapel Hill office ever. So, but we do comprehensive planning and land use codes across the country. And we have a staff of about 20 people. We've done about 600 different projects across the country. We have a 97% adoption rate on our development codes. Sometimes it's short and sweet, and sometimes it's long and painful. And so we have about a little over 250 adopted codes, all of which is to say we come to this with some experience that we're hoping to share with the county. We're also hoping to learn from you and take what you're doing and move it forward. So what are we looking at in terms of just this diagnostic piece for the current regulations? So we want to take a look and see if we can identify strengths and weaknesses in the current zoning ordinance and the joint subdivision regulations. So weaknesses could be outdated regulations that get in the way of the types of development that might be appropriate in the county or lack of regulations that deal with applications that you're getting that you need some regulations around. And then weaknesses might be regulations that are somehow not protecting some of the agricultural uses that you have going in the county or other priorities that the county wants to see. We want to evaluate how the zoning and land use regulations align with the comp plan. So with Plan 2040, also how they're working with your constituent communities like Eudora, and talk about changes that could be made to help that alignment and to help get predictable development that's in compliance with the plans. We're going to take a look at the processes, and we've started this discussion today. How is it that the county's garnering information about development that's taking place out there? And are you able to process applications effectively and smoothly to good outcomes? And so that's some of what we report on in the diagnostic. We want to look for regulatory consistency across incorporated and unincorporated areas throughout the county and talk about gaps that may cause disconnects between the types of development taking place. And then we want to make sure that we've made the code modern and user-friendly. I would say, with great respect, the Douglas County Code could be a little more user-friendly, could include information that helps people make sense of it, which is great. The more we can have the code kind of lift its own weight, the more your staff is able to do the things that you need professional planners and engineers to do. So that's kind of what we're looking at with the project goals. It's just a 6-month process. We're getting kicked off right now, and that is really having internal conversations about issues that staff is having using the regulations. We turn that around and create an issue identification list that we'll share back with Planning, Public Works, and Sean's team. And I think our goal at this point is to release that issues list to you and to the Planning Commission and see if you want to add on or comment about the things that you see in front of you frequently. Sometimes as we're in the kind of the depths of the regulations, we don't always see how it plays out in real life. And you may see things that come forward that you want to talk to us about. So we want to make sure that we tell you what we've heard and then let you give us feedback on it and point us in the right direction. Once we've done that issue identification process, we start writing the diagnostic. So it's a report. It usually runs maybe, 40 to 60 pages, depending on how much typing Gabby and I are up to and how many images we put in it. But the goal is to be a readable document that identifies by topic changes that the county might want to make to the regulations. So it is set up as a kind of, here's the issue, and here are some best practices for approaching this issue. Here's some things that might work for the county. So it gives you the opportunity to consider choices. So we share that back with you and with the Planning Commission and take your feedback. And then you have the opportunity to decide if you see things in there that you want to change, that you want to pick up and work on, or if the problems that you're seeing need to be solved in a different way. So if they're policy issues that need to be solved more at a governmental level, or if they are, just relationship issues. So it may be that, talking about some different approaches to plans review or project discussions with Lawrence or with Eudora is helpful. So we kind of cover all those categories. We'll cover things that aren't code related, but that come up. And because it's kind of an all-in universe, we can't just change the words without thinking about how people are using them. So that is kind of where we come back. We do a presentation with you in person, take questions, can answer questions that you might have specifically or more hypothetically. And that's in late June. And then we leave you with that information and you guys can deliberate about what you think about it. We have a few questions that we want to ask, but I'm going to stop and just let you guys ask anything you want to ask of us about the project itself before we kind of talk content.
Commissioners, go ahead if you've got questions.
I do have a question about the process. One of the questions that I received today was around public input. As a part of the process, will you be engaging the public in how they've engaged with zoning and codes, with the Planning Commission, and giving them a chance to sit down and give their input about how that process has been going throughout the years?
Yeah, so that's an issue that we've talked about as a kind of a project team with your staff a couple times. Our starting point is to get information from the people using the regulations every day to kind of see what they're seeing. What we find when we do these kind of projects is a lot of people, it sounds like you've been contacted by someone, but when we do public outreach, we don't get a ton of response until we get the report ready, and then we give people something to respond to. I think that what I would say is let's get through the issues list and see where we are, and then we'll check back with Tanya and Sean. And if your instructions are get out there and talk to public or developers more, we'll work on building that into the project. Initially, it was kind of an internal until the report's done and then let everybody in the community respond to it. But projects take different paths as we go forward, and we're open to that. Just, depending on how you guys want to see it.
And I think what I'm hearing at this point from the public is that they would definitely like to give input into this process. I think when I raised some concerns with staff around coding consistencies, especially in District 5, it really came from constituents and their concerns around coding consistencies. And so at least I know in District 5, there's a fair amount of constituents that would like to provide public input. And so however we provide an opportunity for community conversation. I know that Carl and team did a fantastic job around the Wakarusa listening sessions. And so if there's an opportunity for something similar, that would be extremely valuable.
Yeah, so that's great feedback for us. And talking about that, we have talked about also preparing a set of questions for the township meeting that's going to take place in February. So that is on our list, but we'll work with Sean and do some more listening, expand that process and see what people want to say.
I think it's just to make sure everybody's aware, part of this initial kickoff with you all, we're also going to the Planning Commission later this evening as well to kind of give a similar sort of overview. But there are engagement efforts already planned and organized with some of our technical stakeholders. So that's the fire districts, the rural water districts, townships, excuse me. So again, this is just sort of an evolving process that I think we want to get an understanding of how these tools are actually being utilized. And by tools, I mean the zoning code, the subdivision regulations, and how that ties back to the plans that have already been developed that have had a fair amount of engagement within them. So that's your comprehensive plan as far as that foundational document. But again, I'm really looking forward to, I think, bringing this forward, having recommendations. One way I kind of think about this, and I just want to maybe look at it from a different lens, is this is similar to having a car. We already have a car. That's our comprehensive plan. Then we get into how we're driving it, and sometimes it doesn't always work the way that we thought it was going to. So we take it to a mechanic. In this instance, a diagnostic review. They give us a list of all the things that are wrong with our car, and then you all are going to consider that and ultimately decide or prioritize and say, this is what we need to work on. So I just want to frame that maybe in a different way, in a non-zoning context to give a little bit of color to this undertaking.
And Sean, I hear you, but I think I go back to constituents calling me on a daily basis and asking for public input. And this goes back to Patrick Ross's comment about New Boston Crossing having a new name. And it goes back to code inconsistencies. We need public input and a community conversation.
I guess the way I'm thinking of it, and let me check my understanding with it, is we're talking to technical partners, the staff, and our other elected officials and townships and water boards and everything, and working on this issues list. But any solution conversations would come back, and that would be the point where we would need to be engaging the larger public, because though only the folks kind of using the code are aware of some of these technical difficulties with it, everybody has a stake in what that code does. So any policy changes and such that would come out of that's then the kind of the larger conversation. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yeah, you're characterizing it perfectly. I think, again, this is not meant to necessarily come to any sort of conclusion or to change anything concretely in our policies or regulations. This is simply meant to sort of inform that conversation, and then ultimately those would come back to you all with a 40-page report articulating what those issues or concerns may be.
And what we hear back from constituents within that process, and as we do outreach to constituents, that can also inform not only this issues list, but also getting ready for a more public engagement about solutions. Would that be fair?
Meant to inform, but I do feel that constituents should be included in the first pass.
I have a question. You mentioned the comprehensive plan. How does your analysis not renegotiate the comprehensive plans. There are competing values listed in our comprehensive plan, and our code can't, and I'm open-minded to understand if it can. You said what's wrong with our code. I'm trying to think of how our code can hold both things to be true at the same time.
Yeah, the code's not human, so it may have a problem with that. So we're passingly familiar with Plan 2040. We're the team that updated the city of Lawrence's regulations, and we do know that there are some fuzzy areas in the plan. And we questioned before we came in here, how does this play out when you're trying to make sense of kind of policy that doesn't get you all the way there? So I think in this situation, we never see it as our job to write policy. It's your job to approve policy. But we could come up with some differing interpretations that would make sense in light of, best practices in planning, and then tell you what the regulatory changes would be at a higher level to support those interpretations of the plan. I think that we know from studying and getting ready for the meetings today that there are going to be places where we're going to need to come back to the commission and say, tell us how you want to see this. And it makes a difference in the long-term development in the county over time. So I think we would probably position those in the report as it could be this, it could be this, or it could be this. And then just based on which is the choice that moves county policy forward, this is how we would take the code update. So perhaps more of a flow chart approach, if this, then this. And then once we got the feedback from you about this is how we as a county interpret this part of the plan, because our goal isn't to rethink the plan, right? The plan's in place. So we want to put the best regulations in place that implement the plan. But any plan, every plan we work with has those gray areas. And so we try to hand it back up with some explanation and say, okay, point us off in the right direction. And then we can take it from there. And it may mean, another internal conversation before we're able to complete the report. And we'll take it from there and say, okay, if the county's going in this direction, this is the way the code should work. It will implement the plan to do this thing. So that's kind of our approach. I think it sounds kind of a little, theoretical at this point, but we do try to be really clear about, hey, we can do this in the code, but this is a policy choice. And so we hand those back up in your direction.
Kind of piggybacking on Commissioner Kelly's comment, there's so much within our plans, and especially within Plan 2040, that uphold conflicting values or competing values, because we're a broad, diverse community. We care about a lot of things.
Right.
And I think we do our job best when we acknowledge that we're not supporting just one thing. We're having to balance across values that are very strongly held within our community, and help to translate that back to people also. So I don't want to lose that piece of it. I think that's actually a strength in Plan 2040, is to kind of have a space where people can come and find, like, this supports my point of view. This supports a different point of view. And I think a lot of what you're planning to look at are more like the technical issues of, we have code language that says this in one place and this in another place, and it's in direct conflict. And how can we streamline that for the public? I'm assuming, and because I had checked in with Sarah, like my first assumption about what this process was very kind of high level around, big policy potential changes and conversations that would be very public and need to be very public. And I'm kind of gathering that this is a little bit more nuts and bolts, and how are we kind of working more smoothly within, even if we don't change directions in policy, like how do we make what we have work better for the public?
It is more nuts and bolts. And I think that's it's a really good add-on to Commissioner Kelly's question, because I think that one of the things that we find when we get into that interaction between a plan and a code is that oftentimes older codes tend to be more one size fits all. And in a code update, we could say, we can implement this policy this way in this place, or we can implement it this way in this situation. And so we want to build some more flexibility into the regulations and make sure that we're kind of changing lenses as we need to. So, are we doing good development plus extra sustainability or plus equity or plus, thinking about our seniors over time? And so we try to, kind of play that 3D chess game as we look at this. And to your point, in the end, we are coming back and saying, okay, if this is where the county wants to go, deeply in the weeds, here are some changes that you need to think about.
Any other questions, commissioners, for now, or shall we have her proceed with the presentation? Okay, not seeing anybody unmute, so please pitch whatever questions you have for us that you'd like us to consider next.
So we wanted to get a feel from you, and this is really based on how applications come to you. So it doesn't necessarily, you don't have to cite, line and verse of the code to us, but at your level, are there things that you see that come up that aren't, I said particularly well calibrated, or that, that just seem to be clunky, that aren't working as well as you'd like them to, and you kind of want to get down a path, but the code is keeping you from going there?
Certainly, I think it's been our observation and also the public that brings it to us about our planning process and how many steps it has and how convoluted it is.
Yeah.
And just being able to provide more clarity, and when do things need to come to a public hearing, and when are things just a checklist that if it meets these criteria, then that public meeting doesn't add or subtract anything. It's already meeting those codes. I think we've seen some of those come up, in terms of what site plan is administratively approved and what site plans come to us. And I'm thinking of one in particular that had it had two different processes that needed to happen in order for a business to come in. They opted not to do those at the same time, which means they went through one process that was 6 months and then had to start all the way back at the beginning. And I don't think they were quite aware of that.
Yeah.
And I really felt for that business that was especially burdensome. And it's not like they do this all the time. It was the only time that they would have been before this body. So some of those places where you were talking about clunky, I think we've got some of that.
Can I ask just one follow-on on that? So sometimes we see people that are only coming through the process once in their lives, or just really every now and then. And then we see people who are professionals and this is what they do. So kind of what I heard you say was that there can be some surprises in the regulations. And if you don't kind of live them on a frequent basis, that you may get caught in some sort of circle like that. Yeah, okay, okay. And I know this is hard to do on the fly. So we will send these questions back when we send the issues list back. I always feel like this is a pop quiz, but I never know what's going to come up. So we proceed.
I have a thought to share. I appreciate the questions, and I think that they're good prompts for us to be thinking about through this process. One thing that stood out to me is it's really kind of a combination of that question 2 and question 3 you have here. And I'm interested in hearing some perspective and feedback about the relationship between rezoning, CUP applications, basically major land use applications that are going to come to Planning Commission, city and/or county, or potentially school district, depending on what it is, right?
Right.
And specifically in those instances, if and when a request to update a sector plan is part of that application packet.
Okay.
So that's come up a couple of different times. And so it's, a municipal level planning and land use issue that otherwise would not come to the county commission because it's fully inside the city limits of whatever city it is. But depending on what I suppose roadblocks a developer might see to developing in that area based on the comprehensive plan and specifically the sector plans within that can sometimes end up involving the county in in a development process and series of decisions for a development that's completely inside the city limits, if that makes sense. So I'm interested to
does.
hear some feedback about how the interplay of that, it's those sector plans are part of the comprehensive plan, but the sector plans I think are an interesting thing that bring municipal land use issues to the county
To the
commission,
county.
but in a very narrow, restricted decision point.
Okay. Thank you. We will dig into that. Should I ask for the follow-on? And is it fun or is it something that you could spend some other time doing something else?
Fair,
okay.
fair question. I think it makes it confusing and convoluted for the public. Just let you know if it's an issue that the public is engaged in.
Yeah.
Sort of knowing where the decision makers and where the authority lies can get a little convoluted. And there's some things that make it clear that, votes have to happen at multiple governing bodies, depending on the nature of the issue. So I think that's one outcome. And then otherwise, I think I would give the feedback. My personal opinion is that it feels maybe like that decision point may not, for us to take up the issue and spend time on it, may not have much impact because it doesn't change the trajectory of that application and request otherwise. And so sometimes I find myself wondering, is there a point for us to be engaged in this, or is it mucking the waters more than is necessary?
Thank you for a great answer to my silly question. I actually didn't see it going there. Thank you.
I don't know which question this answers, but I, like Commissioner Reed, really appreciated the questions. I would offer the perspective that we have not been a zoned county for very long.
Okay.
And I want to share that I have heard from those who have worked with our planning and zoning office how they do such a nice job of sort of walking them through. Some of these people who have lived in these spaces for a long time and didn't even know there were zoning rules even when they bought the property, and now they are. I've done a really nice job of working with them to understand what those regulations are. So I say that in a way, you said over modernize. I don't want to take that. I don't think we're ready yet to remove that critical element of that. And I'm sure you wouldn't recommend, but that critical element of how staff engages with the public and provides that perspective. We're unique in that we have a shared city county planning office, but our zoning and codes offices are separate. And so I'm really interested in any kind of suggestions you have those are two very different types of end users, and how, I don't know if it's within your purview. Should we continue that? Is that the right plan? Because to go a little bit of what Commissioner Reed is talking about, there are times when we have to approve comprehensive plan that I'm not sure it matters for us. And it seems like it's fuzzy for why, and yet the city is within the county. So I think it just makes it really tricky. The other thing that's a little more specific is I think our use tables are somewhat convoluted, and I'm sure they're not arbitrary because we made decisions at some point about
I
which.
never use that word.
Yeah, I mean, they're not arbitrary at all, but it does make me question how this thing got certain conditions on it and this one does not.
Yeah.
And I wish we could spell out a lot better what the conditions are that we need to consider,
Yeah.
having seen applications that come and want us to consider a condition about. My favorite in all my years has been the smell of a property, like how we're going to condition that and what's the parameters of our abilities to condition that.
That's all fair game for this project. Thank you.
By not being zoned very long, you mean 60 years? 1966, wasn't that when we started? Blink
Had a
of an
pretty
eye.
significant update to our zoning regulations.
I wanted to tag on the area plans, sector plans. A lot of what we have is outdated. So that, and they've been on the list for the planning development services that shared city county office to to update some of those, and it just takes forever. And that's whenever we have something that comes to us, there's always a disconnect between kind of a modern understanding of that area and it doesn't necessarily work with the comprehensive plan, or it's incorporated in the comprehensive plan, but we're dealing with kind of these really old discussions and old land uses, and that's always tricky. So that just
Planning gets dated because it changes over time. We all change how we want to live and work and be. And so that kind of aging out makes things a lot harder to deal with.
those fringe areas you talked about, areas that are kind of likely to be developed that are near city limits and such, those are pain points. They're just difficult. They're difficult for a community to kind of grasp that level of change.
Yeah.
And yet we have significant needs for growth and expansion in our cities and commercial, industrial, and tax base, et cetera. I think some of those questions have been around like what comes first and whose jurisdiction is it to upgrade roads to that standard or bring in the water service and utilities. Like, I think that you asked kind of what is a difficulty between municipalities and county code. I'd say some of those, and landscape companies are always one that their use on roads is significant. And so for township roads or gravel roads, whether they be the county or the township, those are always areas of difficulty that we haven't quite found a solution to. So that and hosting light industrial in the unincorporated area.
Yeah.
And a kind of a needed conversation with water districts and their needs and their ability to meet needs there. That I don't know if all of those things kind of fall under
Excellent. Yeah,
your
no,
purview.
that it does. We do a lot of work with counties, and right now we're working with Johnson County, and we previously worked with Riley County, and we've worked with a bunch of counties in Colorado, and infrastructure is top of the list in the county. You have usually so much pressure from people who want the glorious county experience and all of the infrastructure they'd get in the city. And, but then also you get the heavy duty uses that get located in the county. And there are infrastructure requirements for those, be they just like a small industrial thing or a larger industrial thing. So that's definitely all on the list. And it makes sense that you'd raise those questions. Thank you.
And I'm also interested in understanding from the Planning Commission and those that you're surveying, their thoughts and opinions around the various plans and what they think about the commission and the commission's stance or purview on voting around those particular plans and the golden factor, and the fact that those plans don't necessarily have to be considered or weighted when we're considering those plans. And so even though those plans are used in consideration for planning and presentations, when it does come before the commission, the golden factor is used. But we don't necessarily have to use any of those plans in our consideration, even though that is what it is weighted and used as the basis for all consideration. So there's just this.
So that creates a disconnect.
There's an extreme disconnect. And so I'm just super curious as to what everyone that you're going to survey thinks about that disconnect, because then it comes back to the commission. They do all this work.
Yeah.
And then it's very disconnected. And even though it comes before us, it's still extremely disconnected. And then we have to make a decision regarding that disconnect.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I would ask, does it play any role outside of the rezoning process, or is that the only place where you guys are looking at the sector plans? That's the
Ps,
painful
CUPs
place.
CUPs, some conditional use permits.
Some conditional use permits. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
I might just share just sort of summary feedback, or what my biggest hopes are about outcomes from this diagnostic review is I'm looking forward to, I like the technical information, so I'm looking forward to hearing the feedback from staff and the daily users, as you reference, and sort of the opportunities for lack of a better phrase, easy fixes, the technical stuff that is going to make staff's life simpler,
Yeah.
more streamlined, more efficient, more plain language,
Yeah.
more digestible, those types of things that really support staff in being able to clearly articulate things and not have to, we know that gray space exists and that, to Commissioner Kelly's point, the opportunity and access for staff to be available to members of the public, especially, residents, not developers, who might be navigating processes, is, I think, an important value. And I want that to be simpler for staff to do, and for that to be a process that is a little bit more as predictable as possible,
Yeah.
given all the particularities. And that the other outcome I hope for is that after sort of being able to identify some of those quote unquote easy fixes and technical things that make the daily work of managing our code and zoning processes simpler, that then that the public conversation about opportunities for more substantial or significant changes that are really rooted in content, values, processes, things like that, that it will be a more distilled list and a little bit easier for us, I think, as a commission and the public to understand some maybe big ideas for us to grasp and consider how we want to adapt, and what we might want to change about our policies or processes in a larger way that has sort of that direct impact on the public's access for it. So that, in my mind, when I read through this and as our conversation has evolved this evening, I see that as sort of the twofold outcome of this diagnostic review, is that it really helps staff feel a little bit more grounded in the daily use of all of these things and how they need to process that, and feel better about that piece of it. And that will inform us, meaning the county and the staff and the commission's ability to then frame the conversation on a larger public scale in terms of different, whether it's community engagement sessions, surveys, whatever tools we sort of identify as opportunities to really engage the public in some feedback on those big ideas or opportunities for adapting, changing, or making different choices than we have previously. So I just want to share that that's sort of my read on what I'm hearing, and my hope for what those two sort of outcomes that we can hold side by side. And I think, Commissioner Anderson, to some of your questions and points earlier, I think public engagement is obviously very necessary as part of this process. I think that it is to go back to, I'm so sorry, I forgot your name.
Elizabeth.
Thank you.
It's okay. It's totally okay. I said it once 20 minutes ago. Don't worry about it.
To go back to what Elizabeth shared before, this idea that a report after this first phase is something for both the commission and the public to react to, and then to determine what concrete things we can do with that report and navigate some next conversations. And so I think that I would also offer that my perspective is the way that staff currently functions and how close they are to the people of Douglas County who have to call zoning and codes for reasons XYZ, questions, concerns, confusion, that our staff is so in touch with those folks and so close to it that I would imagine, and staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine that really the sort of issues that staff are going into this diagnostic review with are largely based on feedback that they have received from the public. And that sort of consistent cataloging of the types of questions that are getting that might indicate there's clear confusion about how this process is supposed to go, or concerns and problems that are communicated about, I don't think that this is fair or right, or I think it's too cumbersome, those types of things. My experience with zoning and code staff over the years has been that, they do a pretty good job of really keeping track of the common issues that are coming up. And sometimes it's probably as simple as it might say shall in one paragraph and it says may in the next paragraph, and that's a contradiction that people can get hung up on. Two larger, more content-based issues that can be really situational and issue specific and maybe hard to fully address in a technical review at first. So I guess I would just offer that I think public input comes in many forms. And I think how I know our zoning and code staff to operate and how engaged they are with members of the public every day tells me that this diagnostics review is going to be largely informed by the public input that's been received and cataloged over time. And now it's sort of culminating in here are some themes and some opportunities for addressing that.
Just maybe a comment. I think it is certainly seductive to think that we can do a code evaluation and it will make our jobs easier. I actually have no hope for that whatsoever. I mean, yeah, it's okay. Because I think my experience over time has told me that one person may read the code one way or a comprehensive plan one way, and another person may read it completely different with a different set of values behind it. And part of our job as elected officials is to take that public input and make a decision based on the policy that we have and make the best decision we can with the information that we have. Certainly, there are places within the code that need looking at, and I think we've heard a couple of great examples this evening of where they may be in conflict with each other and can be cleaned up. But I do think that part of the reason we have the democratic system we have, the reason we have public comment, the reason that some applications come forward to us here is because there isn't a clear decision that can be made just by looking at the code or by looking at the zoning regulations or the comprehensive plan. Otherwise, we wouldn't need a commission, and we wouldn't need government, and an elected government at that. So, without getting too philosophical here, I think those are good things that do make our jobs challenging at times. But I want public to come in and comment. I want to hear how one group looks at it and another group looks at it. And, if we can provide more clarity, okay, but the next commission may come in with a total different read of those same, the same language in many of our documents.
I would respond to that I agree with you. I've been doing this for 30 years. Nobody wants a code that solves all the problems. You need a little white space in there for creativity or for someone to come forward with something you didn't think of and I didn't think of, but you have the opportunity to take a look at it. So what we do in the regulations that go into the code is try to set shared expectations. So we try to move away from as many places where, I can read it one way and you're reading it another way, but there's still room for innovation in there or room for someone to question, just to say, okay, why did you adopt this? This isn't working. So I agree. I think your code could move to a better place. It's not going to take you guys out of the running at all. There is still a big role to be had here in that final decision making.
I think the goal would be to make staff's job easier
Yeah.
and the public's job easier as they interact with the code. I think our job is meant to be tough. The easy stuff could be solved at the staff level, and the difficult and contentious issues where they're weighing of values have to come here, and that's what we're here for.
And I just want to call out that task 3 says prepare a public draft to discuss at work sessions with the Planning Commission, but also with the Douglas County Commission. And so that public draft, if that is what is meant for public input,
Yeah.
The work session for the Douglas County Commission, that is not the place for public input, because our work sessions, the public does not get to provide public input. So that would not be the right convening for public input, because they would not be able to provide public input.
Okay.
They would just sit there and listen.
It could be, and we can talk to staff about this afterwards, but often we post it on a website and leave copies of it in places where people can get access to it and leave an opportunity for folks to leave comments. We make it clear you can, send us a postcard if that's how you want to communicate. You can text, you can do a TikTok dance if you want to do that, leave comments on the draft. And I think that's a place where let's take like 1 or 2 steps forward, see what we're bumping into, and then figure out how we want that to play out. Because we definitely want it to be something that people can see and read and talk about.
And I think a face-to-face would be much more productive for public input versus people just leaving comments. So I made a comment that what was hosted for the Wakarusa listening session was fantastic because people could come out, they could see the drafts, they could touch it, they could feel it, they could talk to people and really engage. So when you send it out for public comment, sometimes people don't see it, and just reviewing something and then drop it in your comment, people don't think that people see it. They don't think that people are going to respond to you. And sometimes people don't respond. And so they make an assumption that no one's going to look at your comment.
And we can certainly,
I hear what you're saying. And we'll-
yeah, we can certainly put it also on a regular agenda so that we could receive public comment at the meeting.
And that is task number 4. So I'm just calling out task number 3.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, commissioners, we've had a lot of great discussion so far. I just want to see if anybody's got lingering questions that they want to ask of Elizabeth before we open this item up for public comment. Okay. Elizabeth, can I ask you to stop sharing your screen? Or actually, it looks like maybe Jake is going to come help with that part, just so the camera view is back on. Thank you. You're welcome to have a seat if you'd like. We'll open this up for public comment and call you back if the commission has any
Thank
further
you.
questions. Anybody in the audience here wish to provide general or public comment about this specific agenda item? Just a reminder for anybody who might be on Zoom, please use the raise your hand function for staff.
Okay. What if theoretically the city of Lawrence was not following their own codes? At what point could the county step in on behalf of those same conflicting issues that you say are within your code? It applies to both the city of Lawrence versus Douglas County. What if a development, let's say, was somewhere around, I don't know, K10 and Highway 59, and it raised both the velocity and level of the water in such a way that it threatened everyone downstream? And the county, as I understand it, is in charge of flooding issues in the county, right? Is that correct? What if a project were to go through and proceed and the city of Lawrence would presume to redefine what a rise in the river is from 0 inches to 0 feet, which in my view is still 0. But what if they were to do that and somehow through all of these like great governing regulatory bodies, a project that is building extensively in the floodplain is allowed to proceed? At what point could the county do something? So what I'm trying to say is basically the county needs to weigh in on certain issues that are in opposition ideologically with the city. And at times when the city is not acting under its own codes, how can the county curtail those mistakes from being made? And for example, I know of a Board of Zoning appeal that was made by the guy who wrote all of the floodplain codes in this area. It was his lifelong dedication and passion. His daughter came and spoke before the city and championed his life's work and even highlighted a Board of Zoning appeal that her father made that was never heard because the same entities that are pushing that project through found out ways to stall and indefinitely suspend a Board of Zoning appeal. And so I was just frustrated to see that. I also have a great friend of mine who said, how do you quantify environmental loss versus property tax benefit to a city and governance? It's hard to go up against one side that can say, look at how much money we're going to make, when in reality, they're doing things that can never be undone to things that our system and way of life does not value. So, and lastly, it is my understanding that a sitting representative in either city or county could bring up a Board of Zoning appeal to be heard. And for those of you who knew John Hassey or care about the
Time.
Wakarusa Valley, please do so on behalf of the project.
Before you walk
Project.
away, can you please say your name for the minutes? And that
Yeah.
is your time.
Yeah, Patrick Ross 66049, and
Thank
please
you.
call for John Hassey's Board of Zoning Appeals to be
Thank
heard.
you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay.
Carrying too much junk. Tim Hamilton, 66044. So for 2 years in the city, they took up the density and infill code changes. So they had 2 years of hearings. And a friend of mine who's president of one of the neighborhood associations went to every single one of those. And she said not at, and they were all public hearings, to your point, Commissioner. Never was the public allowed to ask questions or make comments. Now, my friend sent emails and asked questions. Sometimes they got answered, sometimes they didn't. When it finally came to a head, it went in front of the Planning Commission, split vote, then goes to the City Commission. 220 people showed up, and many of them were angry. And they had one request, and that is, we really haven't had time to process this. Can you delay it? And it was so packed that they went up the elevator and grabbed chairs from other floors in the city building because people were so ticked off that they didn't feel that they had their voice involved. There was no buy-in. So when I hear there's going to be public forums, that's not the same as a listening session. And that's not the same as giving the public an opportunity to ask questions. And to hold that to the very, very end seems to be a mistake if it is true that you really want the public interest and the public buy-in. Early on, there ought to be some listening sessions, and there ought to be the opportunity for the public to ask questions on it. The last thing I wanted to say is really nice PowerPoint that was put up. You know, we're visual human beings. The project goals slide did a real nice job of, you know, showing strengths and weaknesses, regulatory consistency. There was also a project timeline slide that was up there, and that helped illustrate the order of tasks. So I want to thank our presenters for making my point from earlier in the meeting. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Anybody else here with us in the public? Go ahead.
Good evening, commissioners. My name's Dominique. My zip code 66049. I'm interested to see what the report says because I think a lot of things get caught up in a lot of detail. And so getting that technical understanding and transparency so the public can understand it too, that's important to me because I think, you know, I've been advocating against the new Boston Crossing, now called 1059, and some of the details are the key players and a lot of the understanding of the project and what the city can or the county can. And so I understand it gets confusing as somebody who is just a layperson. I'm not a developer. I don't know how a lot of these processes go. So I would be interested to see, just kind of as a public input, if there could be maybe some way to compare what the county zoning regulations are in some of the municipalities to see what differences there are. So like if the city of Eudora has maybe different flood regulations from like what the county has, or if the city does, or, you know, something akin to that where there's a huge difference between what the county has and the city has for the public, just to be able to compare and see and understand. I think it's important for the county to still be involved in the comprehensive plan process because I think there is a check and balances in that. It is confusing, but I think it gives kind of residents a little bit more ability to be heard and leverage and get more input from different perspectives and different understandings of local governance, so we can understand that as well. If there would just be like a way for it to be a little bit easier for some of the public to understand it, I think that would be good. But I'm really interested in the technical details, seeing what needs to be updated, and see how the county wants to go in certain directions on if they are going to update their own zoning or if they want to engage in other aspects of the code to be updated. So that's pretty much all I have to say, but I appreciate your guys' diligence in trying to get the public to be involved in a lot of this, because I think sometimes the public has a lot of outcry because we don't feel heard, and that's not necessarily true. But the formats for the public to be heard are sometimes frustrating, or like it's different from somebody who works in a zoning office to understand the technical details. But if something has a technical definition legally that is common knowledge in the zoning department that the public might know, fleshing out that detail or maybe providing a definition might be useful for the public. So maybe we don't waste our time or cause a hullabaloo about something that can't necessarily be brought up under a certain jurisdiction. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else here with us in the room? Okay, seeing nobody else stand up. Any raised virtual hands, Sarah? All right, we'll go ahead and close public comment on this item and bring it back to the commission for any closing thoughts or any questions that they might have for staff or our guests before we end this agenda item, which as a reminder is for informational purposes only this evening.
I think one of the things that, we are a county 25 by 25 miles or so, like with 4 cities in it, and yet our county code is over the unincorporated area for the most part. And I think that's something to, like, it doesn't necessarily supersede the code that cities have. It depends on whose jurisdiction it is, if it falls under our code or under the city's code. And possibly there are items like flooding that may have some more interaction than that. But I think those are some questions then that can come up in this process also.
Just want to thank the public input that happened this evening, and we did receive some slides. So, we always take public comment in writing, and I appreciate public comment in writing. And so thank you. I think that's part of this process, and it was great to hear that this evening.
Let's say we take public comment in grocery stores, we take public comment at church, we take public comment driving down the street.
Yeah.
I think that's the beauty of local government that we don't have at the state and federal, is that we are in our communities all the time, and people access us in a variety of ways. And so I just want to encourage that that's expected and normal and wanted, and all of that. So email is probably the most common, but yeah, I don't think there's any aspect of my life that I go to that I'm not then also available for public comment.
Yeah, I'll just share some feedback or put it, maybe highlight a point I heard in public comment, which I think I also heard Elizabeth talk about earlier in the presentation, references how part of this diagnostic review will look at all the municipal, basically all the plans, comprehensive plans and city-specific plans and township plans if they exist, that are basically interact with each other. So I am looking forward to that part of the review and some sort of zoomed out perspective about the totality of those things and what potential discrepancies or like potential flat out contradictions that have caused problems. I am interested in that piece of it because I think continuity is something that this commission does care about. And on a county level in particular, working with so many different governments on different zoning and codes issues, there's no universality to everything, and each jurisdiction should have the right and the ability to create zoning and codes that work for them. But I do think that it's a helpful role where the county stands to be able to have a comprehensive picture of that and a clear understanding of where the contradictions or confusions might exist and what are ways we can maybe alleviate that or at least address it for staff's planning purposes in the future.
I'm remembering a previous project that we had at the commission, and it was the maps that had to go from 3 commission districts to 5 commission districts, and interacting with the public around that issue about what does the public want to see, what do individuals want to see, what values should be in those maps. And the engagement came after from our county clerk, from Jamie Shu, who had, here are some examples of what that could be. And then people had a lot to say because they had a tag point to start from. And so I'm thinking of this issues list, coming to, first hear from, staff and the people who, and our other elected officials and jurisdictions in the county, how they interact with the code. I think when we bring that issues list to the public, I think we will learn new issues that go with it. I think that's when people will really know how to engage with it, and probably passionately so. So I would welcome any input that comes during this process and before that time, but I think that that's probably when we will have clear pictures of how to engage, or how people want to engage with that content, because the code is very nerdy, and we all kind of fall under it, but not everybody to the same level. So I really think a lot of these kind of dotting I's and crossing T's will happen at the staff level, that things that they need to see to do their job right, that that is, it comes to us and it benefits the public, but it's not something that the public would start from the public. I think it would start from kind of that professional staff level. So I want to make sure that we're open to those things, but I always value what the public has to say, and and I pass those then back to Tanya and her staff. She hears from me regularly about things that I've heard in the public about how they're interacting with the code. But I think once we have a kind of a list where people know how to come back and engage, I think we'll get a lot more.
Right. Any closing thoughts, commissioners, before we close this agenda item? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much to our guests, and thank you, staff, for your work so far. We look forward to the continued conversation. Thank you for the public comment also. We appreciate that. That brings us to the end of our regular agenda item tonight, and we move on to appointments. And commissioners, I have a note for just that one appointment is ready based on information we received from staff, that there's a recommendation for one of the open seats on the Food Policy Council for Robert Hickerson. And I just want to check in with commissioners. I feel ready to move forward with that. I know it's been an open seat for a while. Seems like a very qualified individual, and I take staff's recommendation seriously. I just want to check with commissioners if anybody has a request to pause that for any reason. Okay. With that, I will make a motion to appoint Robert Hickerson to the Food Policy Council general, one of the Food Policy Council's general seats.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Any other appointments that commissioners want to discuss this evening?
No, but I would give just a quick update that Commissioner Anderson and I met with staff over kind of the really fantastic and long list of exciting people who are interested in serving on the Blackjack Battlefield steering committee. And we kind of pitched back to staff like some of the buckets we're looking to fill. We only get 3 spots, and we must have had 24 people that are all really phenomenal. And so just trying to figure out like who Baldwin City has already put in and what their strengths are, and then what strengths need to be filled in around those. It was a great discussion. We've not finished that. We've asked for a little bit more input back from staff. So you'll be hearing more from us with presumably a staff recommendation to this board for further discussion. We don't have that yet.
Thank you, Commissioner Willie. All right, we will move on from appointments. Next is Commissioner and Administrator Miscellaneous, and we'll start with Sarah's memo.
Thanks, commissioners. My memo's in the packet. Lots of new dates got added. There's a lot of big stuff going on in the next couple of weeks. Want to highlight that there's a free business preparedness meeting on February 2nd. Several organizations, including the Chamber, KU Innovation Park, and our Unified Command FIFA planning group are doing some training on business preparedness there. We've got a drug court graduation coming up. Criminal Justice Service is starting to host a parent project, which is a 10-week course designed to equip guardians with the roles to address teen issues. So want to make sure the community knows about that. Conservation District's getting ready to host its annual township meeting, which you all knew about. There's a workshop coming up from emergency management. I can't believe we're going to talk about extreme heat readiness right now, but we're planning for that meeting in March. So please try to help us get the word out on some of these events. Just want to let The commissioners know that the appraiser's office has sent mailers to announce state law changes that exempt certain personal property from taxation. So a copy of that mailer is attached to the packet, and that's gone out to the commission, or it's gone out to the public that has those particular types of property. Next week, we have an update on our food system, and the next several Wednesdays in a row, we've got work sessions at 4 o'clock. So that's all I have, commissioners.
Thank you, Sarah. Any miscellaneous items from commissioners?
Yeah, Karen wrote a letter. I think Sarah got a copy of it. Is somebody on staff looking into potential cameras on building 21?
Yes, staff's looking into it.
Thank you.
Anything else for the good of the order, commissioners? Okay, with that, we are adjourned. See you all next week. Thank you.